Hey guys, it's Lukion, and today I am finally going to be doing a book review for Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare. I've been promising to do this book review for months now, and I'm finally getting to it right in time for the release of Chain of Iron, which is the sequel to this, but this is the first book in the Last Hours trilogy, and this series is a sequel series to the Infernal Devices, which is a prequel to the Mortal Instruments. Very confusing, but if you're here, I'm assuming you do know a little bit about the Shadowhunter Chronicles and The Last Hour specifically, so I'm not going to do too much, background stuff, but this will be a spoilery review. I'm going to be going into my thoughts on this book, and, but you can watch for, the first couple of minutes where I'm just going to be giving, kind of a summary. But even my summary might be a little bit spoilery for the Infernal Devices, but I will try to keep it as spoiler-free as possible, and I will warn you when I get into spoilers for Chain of Gold specifically. Okay, so before I get into, the actual summary of the book, I do just want to apologize for the lighting, because it's rough. It is currently raining, and I wanted to get this review out before Chain of Iron comes out, so that is why it is not the best lighting. I will try to fix as much of it as I can in editing, in post, so I really do apologize. I hope it's, fine. I'm sure it's fine, but, it's just not, grade A lighting, but, I mean, did you really expect that from my videos? I don't think so. But, okay, so I'm getting into the actual summary of this book. So, this book follows the children of the main characters of the Infernal Devices, mainly. Our main character, the character that is on the cover, is not one of the children that I was referring to, but basically this follows mainly Cordelia Carstairs, who comes to London with her mother and her brother after her father has been convicted of a terrible crime, and so they end up coming to London so they can fix the family's reputation and get Cordelia married, but in actuality, she is going there to become the parabatai to Lucy Herondale, who is the daughter of Will and Tessa from the Infernal Devices, and yeah, we sort of get into some stuff with that. There is a plague in this book, and a demon that walks in the daylight, and this is a terrible summary, but I don't really know how to describe this book. Even the synopsis, the actual summary, is not the best, but basically, we follow Cordelia mainly, and also Lucy and James. Primarily, that's kind of our main trio of perspectives, but we do also have some other characters that I'm going to get into in a minute. But, yeah, so there are, Shadowhunters, which are, warriors trained from birth to fight off demons, and, you get the situation, right? I don't have to go on. Oh, also, I forgot to mention this takes place in 1903 during the Edwardian era in London, so maybe my lighting is purposeful. Maybe the world was just giving me something to add so that we get some kind of London weather, you know what I mean? But, anyway, so now I'm kind of going to get into spoilers. I'm going to talk about the characters first, then I'm going to go into a kind of detailed summary of the actual plot, and then I'm going to talk about, my overall thoughts on, the writing and, the world building and all that sort of fun stuff. So, if you have not read Chain of Gold, leave, because I will be getting into some juicy details, but, yeah, I hope to see you next week. I actually don't remember what I'm posting next week, but you'll find out. So, thank you for joining if you haven't read the book, but you should probably go if you don't want to hear spoilers. So hello to the people who have stayed. I do have some notes here about the plot, just because I can't remember everything, so I wrote some stuff down so I'm not, looking into space for, 10 minutes, but anyway, the characters. So we already have Cordelia. She is the daughter of Sona and Elias Carstairs, and the sister to Alistair Carstairs. They come to London, all that sort of stuff. Then we have Lucy and James Herondale, who are the son and daughter of Will and Tessa. We also have Grace Blackthorne, who is the adoptive daughter of Tatiana. We have, the Merry Thieves, which is, James, Matthew Fairchild, Charles Lightwood and Thomas Lightwood. We have Anna Lightwood, who is the older sister to Thomas, right? Something like that. And they're like cousins and everything. There's like a whole thing in the book with like that. This is like the collector's first edition. There are a lot of characters, and I can't really get into all of them, but just my overall thoughts on the characters. I really enjoyed all of the characters. This is probably the Cassandra Clare book where I like all of the characters. Usually with Cassandra Clare books and series, I can point out a few characters and perspectives that I really don't care for, but in this book, I really liked all of them, which is a feat to pull off for Cassandra Clare, because there were so many characters in this book. But I really thought all the characters were super interesting. Even, like, the villains. Like, I know a lot of people hate Grace. I actually kind of like Grace. Don't hate me, but I actually kind of like Grace, so. Yeah, but, yeah, I don't really know what else to say about the characters, because I don't remember, like, all of them. Like, I do remember them, but, like, I'm sure I'm forgetting someone that I will, like, read this, like, the thing that I printed out, and I will kind of bamboozle myself. But I'm just going to get into the plot summary now, so let's just get into it. So the book kind of starts out, there are some interstitial chapters which are like Days Past, which takes place before. Some of them take place in like the late 1800s, some of them in like the early 1900s, but they all take place before the book's like main storyline. And the first one we have is like the prologue, and we have Lucy Herondale, who meets a boy in Rossland Forest. And, you know, we find out later that he is Jesse Blackthorne, who is the son of Tatiana, who is, who died when he was young, and so that, we have sort of that, and, we sort of are introduced to Lucy's necromantic abilities, and then in the beginning of the book, like, the first few chapters are mostly just introduction, so we get, like, introduced to all the characters. We find out that Cordelia and Lucy are, like, really good friends, and they plan on being paritae. And, we also find out that James, is sort of, he, like, has some side effects of being, like, the ancestor to a demon, kind of like Lucy does as well, like, with her necromantic abilities, but James, he actually goes into the Shadow Realm, and he can, you know, go into the Shadow Realm. And, so basically, they end up at this ball, and we find out earlier that, like, Cordelia has loved James for years, but James is actually in love with Grace Blackthorne. And so, at the ball, we sort of get to see the love triangle play out. You know, Cassandra Clare loves a good love triangle, and then, Barbara gets attacked, but, like, James kind of, like, he goes into the Shadow Realm, and he knows that Barbara's gonna get attacked, but, like, she ends up recovering or something like that, and then the next day they go to the Regent's Park, and 3 shadow hunters are attacked by this demon that comes out of the water and walks in daylight, which nobody really suspected. Demon activity has actually been pretty, like, subdued for, like, a while, so this was a big shock, having 3 of their shadow hunters attacked, and they are actually injected with this poison that does not have an antidote, so they are taken to the Silent City to sort of heal and start to recover until an antidote is found. So then we find out that Jesse Blackthorne tells Lucy that there is, like, danger in London and that she should be, you know, watching out. And then James ends up traveling to the Shadow Realm purposefully so that he can sort of investigate what is happening with these demons, and instead he finds Tatiana Blackthorne's house, and Lucy and Cordelia are actually snooping around. And Lucy ends up speaking to Jesse. She's the only one that can see him, and he basically tells her that his mother, Tatiana, is involved with some black magic, and she is trying to bring him back to life, and she actually saved his last breath in this locket. And basically Cordelia is investigating the greenhouse, and she ends up getting attacked by this demon. James sees Cortana, which is the Carstairs sword. He sees it light up, and so he goes to help her, and they end up slaying the demon. And then we get this nasty scene from, like, we get this, like, it's like a really short scene where, like, this demon gives birth to a bunch of these eggs, and I just need to read it to you because it is, like, disgusting. So it says, "Moonlight filtered into the greenhouse through shattered glass panes. The Nephilim were long gone, having made their examination of the place and their demands of the mistress of the house. It was finally quiet. The seed pods the Cerberus demon had dropped in its death throes began to shake and tremble, like eggs about to hatch. Their leathery casings split as thorn-sharp teeth tore through them from within. Covered with a sticky film and hissing like cockroaches, the newborn demons tumbled to the packed earth floor of the greenhouse, each no bigger than a child's hand. But they would not remain that size for long. Disgusting. I can't. Like, that's like one of the nastiest things I've ever read. So that is obviously going to come into play later, but the day after that, Cordelia goes to Anna Lightwood's house, and she is the brother of, no, her brother is Christopher Lightwood, not Thomas Lightwood. Sorry for making that mistake before. But they end up, you know, like, they become friends, and Anna asks if Cordelia wants to come with her and Matthew to this Downworlder salon to find out some, you know, information on how to find a cure for this warlock, for this demon poison. And so Cordelia, Matthew, and Anna end up going to the salon that is run by Hypatia Vex, and basically, I don't really remember 100%, but Cordelia ends up, like, finding out that, like, there's this mermaid who is, like, put poison in Hypatia's, champagne glass, and Cordelia, like, knocks the champagne glass out of her hand, and Hypatia ends up giving some information, and they end up getting a lead about the demon poison. So they go to speak to Ragnar Fell, who is a warlock that we've met, like, multiple other times in other books in this, like, in Cassandra Clare books. And so basically James and Grace, like, while this is happening, we see James and Grace, and we find out that Grace kind of has, like, a mental hold on James because he wears this bracelet that used to belong to her, and she can kind of control his mind in a way. And she asks if they want to elope, and they would have to do this, they would have to strip themselves of their marks and not be Shadowhunters anymore. James obviously is like, says no, and after that they are attacked by one of the demons that was, like, birthed from the demon that James and Cordelia slayed at Tatiana's greenhouse. And so they, like, all the others end up helping, and one of the demons calls James the Prince of Hell, or, like, the heir to the Prince of Hell, and basically, okay, so James is, like, really shocked by this, and all of his friends end up saying that they will help him figure out, you know, what is going on, and then they end up meeting with Ragnar Fell again, who tells them to go meet a man named Emmanuel Gast, who he believes is connected to this demon poison, and that he might have been the person to, like, summon the demons that have this demon poison in them. And so they end up going to meet Emmanuel Gast, but they find out that he is dead, and so Lucy uses her necromantic abilities to speak to him, and she finds out that, like, you know, Ragnar was right, and that Emmanuel Gast actually did raise the demon. And so basically after that, James is kind of really, like, emotional about like, his and Grace's relationship ending, and she hasn't, like, spoken to him since he said that he wouldn't elope with her, and Tatiana ends up actually getting attacked by this demon and is wounded, but James is not allowed to help Grace because he doesn't help Grace because she actually is engaged to Charles Fairchild, who was originally engaged, or, like, was, like, involved or dating Ariadne Bridgestock, who was one of the Shadowhunters that was attacked at Regent's Park. And Charles is also Matthew Fairchild's older brother. And so Christopher ends up telling them that, like, Gast's house was, there's, like, a Pyxis box in Gast's house that can hold the demons captive, and that they end up finding out that this demon is actually something called the Manticore, which is a demon from Persian mythology, and Cordelia is Persian, she's half Persian, her mother is Persian, and Cassandra Clare is actually Persian, I think, or she was born in Tehran, so, you know, that's interesting that we have some Persian mythology in here. And so they end up, Matthew, Cordelia, James, and Anna end up going back to Hypatia Vex's place, and they try to steal the Pyxis box, and that they, like, find out that Hypatia, like, has. And so at the salon, we have one of the best scenes in this book, where Cordelia ends up performing a dance to distract the crowd while Anna goes to seduce Hypatia to steal the box. And James and Cordelia end up alone in a room, and they start kissing to prevent the intruders from, like, wondering about the two shadow hunters, like, in Downworld territory, because that's, like, a no-no. And Matthew, who likes Cordelia, ends up finding them, and James tries to, like, say that it was, like, part of the whole scheme and stuff. And so the day after that, or Cordelia ends up, like, hurt because she wonders if he actually felt something for her or not. But the day after that, James and all of them end up going to Magnus Bane, who was another warlock that is, like, one of the best characters in this entire Chronicles series. And they ask him if he can help them trap the Manticore demon, and they end up, like, trying to capture the Manticore demon in the Pyxis box, but Cordelia ends up getting hurt, and Lucy ends up raising the dead to save Cordelia. And so, we see Cordelia in recovery, and she ends up kind of finding out that the reason her father was convicted, or, like, what he did to disgrace their family, is that he's actually an alcoholic, and she never knew that. It was hidden by the rest of her family for years. And Lucy is, like, not dealing with anything bad. She's actually extremely happy that she finds out that she can raise the dead, and she is just, like, living her best life. And she ends up being, like, she finds out that she has, like, this connection to some ghosts. And after that, Christopher is injured in a demon attack, and he was, like, right about to finish creating the antidote for the poison. Oh, also, I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but Alistair, who is Cordelia's brother, is in a relationship with Charles, I think, if I'm not mistaken, and Cordelia ends up, like, catching them, and, like, it's this whole thing. Anyway, basically, after Christopher is attacked, Thomas and Lucy try to, like, go to the Blackthorn mansion, which, by the way, nobody was, like, suspicious of Tatiana, even though she has this nasty house, and she's been wearing the same dress for, like, 2 decades. Not suspecting at all, but whatever. And so, basically, James, Matthew, and Cordelia go to the Silent City, where all of the wounded are, and Christopher was actually taken there. And all of the wounded people are actually end up being possessed, and they are speaking to James, and they are telling him that he needs to go meet a demon. And so they go outside the Silent City, and there's, like, this entrance to the Shadow Realm, and James ends up going in it, and he meets his grandfather, Belial, who is the Prince of Hell, which is why, like, that one demon was saying that James was the heir to the Prince of Hell. And Belial asks James if he can take over James's body to, like, gain more power, and James obviously says no, and Belial ends up raising, or, like, summoning the Manticore demon, but Cordelia ends up jumping through the archway into the, entrance to the Shadow Realm, and she joins James, and they defeat the demon, and Belial is wounded enough that they are able to, like, you know, subdue his powers for a little while. But James and Lucy, Thomas and Lucy end up going, and they get hold of the antidote, and they take it to the Silent City, and all of the wounded recover. James, on the other hand, in the Shadow Realm is really injured, and he almost dies, but Jesse, they give him Jesse's last breath that was trapped in that locket, and James ends up surviving, and Jesse starts to sort of, like, he was, like, kind of corporeal, but now he's starting to, like, fade, and so, like, we're nearing the end of the book, I promise. James ends up waking up in the house after, like, you know, meeting with Belial, and Grace ends up coming, and she puts the bracelet around his wrist, and he kind of, like, you know, is subdued, or seduced by her, and he says that he is in love with her, and Cordelia overhears, and she's obviously hurt. So James ends up going to Idris, and he kills an automaton that Tatiana created and, like, imbued with dark magic. And he basically burns the house down, the Blackthorn house down, and they end up going to an Enclave meeting, and Tatiana accuses him of committing arson, which he did, and Cordelia ends up defending James, and she basically, like, says that he spent the night in her room, and so he couldn't have, like, burned the Blackthorn house down. And she ends up, like, there's this whole scandal because they say that she's, like, an unmarriageable woman, And so James, to save her reputation, ends up proposing to her and says that they will be married for a year before they divorce amicably. And so they will both have a chance at real love. And Cordelia is obviously really hurt because her true love is James, and she, like, it's clear now that his true love is not Cordelia. And so basically they have this engagement party, and they end up dancing, and they talk about, like, the next year that they're gonna have, and everything seems great. And then we get to the epilogue with Tatiana and Belial. Belial has kind of made a recovery, and Tatiana is like corroborating with Belial, and they are going to try to, like, raise Jesse from the dead and take over London in a way. So that is the plot summary, and I bawled. Like, I don't like that. This book probably has the best and most interesting plot of a Cassandra Clare book that I've read. And maybe that's not true, but, like, it is, like, one of the best plots. I feel like Cassandra Clare, a lot of the time, her plots are not, like, the best. Like, she has some interesting plot twists, but, like, the overarching plot is not always, like, super interesting with her books. But this book, she really came through. So this is the only Cassandra Clare book that I've ever rated 5 stars. It was, like, perfect to me, basically. Like, the writing is even better than in The Dark Artifices, which don't really know how that's possible. But the characters were so interesting and compelling and complex, and the plot was really intricate and interesting, and I liked the like, Persian mythology that was introduced and interwoven throughout the story. And I just really loved the additions to the world building, and kind of getting to, we find out who all of the princes of hell are, and, like, we get to see, you know, their names are actually written out, and so that is really interesting. I just really like how with each book she kind of expands the world more and more. We actually get to see the Shadow Realm a lot in this book, and I'm just so excited for Chain of Iron. It is currently Saturday, and the book comes out on Tuesday, so I have, like, 3-ish days to wait. I will be doing a reading vlog for Chain of Iron, and I'm going to talk about all my theories in there, because this video is already friggin' long, and there's no way that I can put my theories in this video as well. But overall, Chain of Gold was just, like, a perfect book in my head. It's, like, the best Shadowhunter book I've ever read. It's the best Cassandra Clare book that I've ever read, and I'm so excited for Chain of Iron. I think this will end up being my favorite series from her. Just, like, all around, like, writing, characters, plot, world building. It's just, like, all the things that I look for in a story are really good. And, like, I'm a little bit more of a character-driven reader than I am plot-driven. They're kind of 50-50 for me, but I really liked how in this book they're really balanced, so I'm a fan. But my camera battery is about to die, so I'm gonna sign off. I will see you next week with a new video. That is the end of this video. I really, really hope you guys enjoyed. And let me know your thoughts on Chain of Gold in the comment section, and also let me know your theories for Chain of Iron. But that is it for this video. I really hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you next week. Bye!